The rainforest was never quiet, but that night the sounds felt different. A low mist crawled between the giant roots and vines of the Amazon, and the air was thick with the smell of wet earth. In the shadows, tiny frogs sang. Bats flitted between the trees, and somewhere far off, a howler monkey screamed like a ghost. But none of that mattered to little Kavi. Kavi was a leopard cub, no larger than a house cat, with golden fur and bright green eyes that reflected the moonlight like tiny fireflies. He had always felt safe when his mother, Luma, was near. She was the strongest creature he knew, powerful, fearless, and warm. She taught him how to climb, how to stalk, and how to listen to the forest with his heart. That night, Luma led him high into the canopy, leaping from branch to branch in search of a sleeping bird. The forest was their home, their playground, but the forest can change in one heartbeat. Kavi paused on a mossy branch to watch fireflies drifting like glowing sparks. He heard his mother above him, claws scratching bark. Then a sudden violent thrashing sound, a hiss like tearing air, and Luma's roar, sharp, wild, desperate. Kavi froze. His claws dug deep into the bark. The sound of leaves exploding echoed overhead. He scrambled up the tree trunk toward her voice, his little heart hammering. When he reached the high branch, he saw something that burned itself into his memory forever. A monstrous green shape had coiled around Luma, a giant anaconda, its body as thick as a fallen log, wrapped around her chest and ribs. Its scales glistened dark green with black rosettes, blending with the mossy bark. Luma's claws shredded bark as she struggled, but the coils only tightened. Her golden eyes met Kavi's for a heartbeat. They were filled not with fear, but with something worse, pain. The snake's head rose like a nightmare, jaws opening to strike at her throat. Kavi's body trembled. He wanted to leap at the snake, to bite it, to claw it. But he was so small, so weak. Luma let out a hoarse snarl, trying to push Kavi away with her paw. "Go!" Her eyes seemed to plead. "Run!" Kavi stumbled backward along the branch, tears blurring his sight. The snake squeezed tighter, and he heard a terrible crack of bone. Luma gasped and went limp, her head dropping, but her eyes were still open, still alive. The snake was trying to crush her before swallowing her whole. Kavi's tail lashed with panic. He couldn't fight. He couldn't save her. He could only run, and that is exactly what he did. He bolted down the tree, claws slipping, almost falling. He crashed through the ferns, scattering glowing beetles. He ran through the shadows as thunder rolled far away. He ran until the sound of his mother's roars faded into the jungle's endless hum. When he stopped, his chest heaved and his tiny paws shook. The forest stretched dark and endless around him. He could smell her blood faint on the breeze. Kavi curled up under a root, sobbing like a broken thing. He was alone, but as he cried, something inside him burned brighter than fear. A memory flashed, Luma telling him, "If you are ever lost, listen to the river. The river always leads to people. People. Humans." Luma had always warned him to stay far away from them. But now, humans might be the only ones who could fight a monster like that snake. Kavi lifted his tear-streaked face. His heart hardened like stone. He would do the impossible. He would find the humans, and he would bring them back to save her, even if it killed him. The world looked different without his mother's shadow beside him. Every sound made Kavi flinch. The screech of a night bird, the rustle of leaves. He was just a cub, barely old enough to hunt mice, yet here he was, trying to cross the most dangerous jungle on Earth. The Amazon is a place where the trees are taller than towers, and the ground is alive with teeth. Ants marched in black rivers. Venomous frogs glittered like jewels. Jaguars prowled silently in the mist, but Kavi didn't care. He walked. His paws sank into mud as he followed the distant whisper of water. The river. The river would lead to people. He limped through thorny vines, down steep ravines, across fallen logs that were soft with rot. Once a shadow swooped from above, a harpy eagle, wings like knives. Kavi dove under a root just in time. As talons slashed the air where he had been, he stayed hidden until the silence returned. Then he ran again. Hours passed. The moon sank behind clouds. The world became black. Kavi's belly ached with hunger, but he pushed on. His claws bled from climbing. His whiskers trembled. Still he whispered in his heart, "Hold on, Mama. I'm coming back." At last he heard it, a low roar, water. The forest opened and there it was, the river. A silver snake of water curling through the trees, glimmering in the moonlight. Kavi's legs gave out. He collapsed on the muddy bank, sides heaving. But he couldn't rest. A splash came from the water. He jerked up, fur bristling. Two glowing eyes rose from the surface. A black caiman. A predator older than time. It surged toward him. Kavi darted back, claws flinging mud. The caiman lunged onto the shore, jaws snapping like thunder. Kavi ran along the riverbank, heart exploding in his chest. The ground crumbled and he slid down into the shallows. Cold water soaked him. The caiman spun to chase. Suddenly, lights flared across the water. Bright, white, human lights, voices. The caiman froze, hissing, then slid silently back beneath the black surface. Kavi stumbled to his feet, water dripping from his fur. His eyes widened. On the far bank, through the trees, he saw them. Humans, 3 of them, carrying packs and wearing headlamps, moving through the jungle with slow caution. They looked tired but strong, their boots sinking in the mud, machetes clearing vines. Kavi's heart leapt with hope. Humans. But then fear struck him. Luma had always said humans feared big cats. They might hurt him, drive him away. Yet if he ran, Luma would die. Tears welled in his eyes again. He took one trembling step toward the river. Then another. The humans hadn't seen him yet. He gathered all his courage, and all the courage of the jungle's smallest warrior, and let out a tiny roar. It was high-pitched and weak, but it carried across the water. The humans stopped. Their lights swung toward him. For one heartbeat, time froze, and then Kavi leapt into the river, paddling furiously, desperate to reach them, because only they could save his mother. The river was colder than Kavi imagined. The current grabbed at his small body, pulling him downstream like a leaf. Water filled his ears. His legs flailed, tiny claws scraping at nothing, but he kept his eyes on the glow of the humans' lights. Swim, swim, swim. Mama was waiting. He burst from the water, coughing, claws sinking into the muddy far bank. His body shook with exhaustion as he dragged himself onto solid ground. The 3 humans stood frozen in their headlamps' beams. They were unlike anything Kavi had ever seen up close. Tall, wrapped in strange cloth, their faces hidden by shiny plastic shields. One carried a metal box that hummed, another a long stick with glass on the end. Their boots crushed the wet leaves with heavy thuds. Kavi's heart thundered. If they saw him as a threat, they might chase him away. But instead of roaring or attacking, the smallest human, a woman with kind eyes glimmering under her helmet, knelt down slowly. She spoke softly. Hey, little one. It's okay." Her voice was low, gentle, like a lullaby. Kavi had never heard a human voice before. It made his ears twitch. The others whispered quickly in their strange language. One of them shone a light over the cub's soaked fur. His ribs showed through his skin. His paws trembled. The kind-eyed woman frowned and said something firm. Then she opened a small bag, pulled out a silver wrapper and tore it. A warm smell drifted out. Meat. Kavi's stomach twisted with hunger, but he didn't move. She placed the food gently on the mud between them and backed away. Kavi crept forward, nose twitching. The smell was rich and smoky. He snatched it and swallowed it whole. The woman smiled softly, but as soon as he finished, he turned away. He padded a few steps toward the jungle, then looked back at them. His tail flicked. He gave a small, urgent meow. The humans didn't follow. He ran back, circled them once, then ran ahead again, glancing back over his shoulder. "Is he trying to lead us somewhere?" one of them murmured. The woman stood, eyes narrowing. "Yes, I think he is." Kavi let out a sharper cry this time, then darted into the trees, and to his relief, they followed. The rainforest swallowed them in seconds. Thick vines hung like curtains, and massive leaves slapped their helmets. Their lights cut beams through the mist, casting strange moving shadows. Kavi trotted ahead, his fur glistening from the river. Every few steps he glanced back, making sure they were still behind him. But the forest was alive with danger. Once the ground sank beneath their feet into sucking black mud. The tallest human fell to his knees. Kavi waited tensely on a log while they pulled him out. Another time, a rustling above made Kavi freeze. A troop of capuchin monkeys screeched down at them, shaking branches. The humans ducked, laughing nervously, But Kavi didn't laugh. He kept moving faster now, weaving through tangled roots, ears flat. The woman whispered behind him, "How far is he leading us?" "Doesn't matter," said the tallest man. "We follow," ours blurred. The human's clothes were soaked with sweat. Mosquitoes whined like tiny saws around them. The forest pressed close, green and endless. Kavi's paws bled. He didn't stop. In his mind he saw his mother's eyes, golden-pained, fading. "Hold on, Mama, I'm coming back." At last the air changed. A smell drifted through the trees, faint but sharp. Blood. Kavi's whiskers twitched. His pace quickened. The humans noticed. "He's speeding up," one whispered. Kavi slipped through a curtain of vines and suddenly stopped. He knew this place. The tree where it had happened stood like a black tower above the canopy. Moonlight spilled through a hole in the leaves, silvering the moss. The bark was shredded with claw marks. Kavi crept forward, heart hammering. He peered up into the branches. At first he saw nothing. Then a shape shifted in the shadows above. The anaconda. It was still there, a massive coil draped across the limb, scales glistening wet and dark. Its body bulged unnaturally. And in the middle of those coils was something golden and still. Luma, her head sagged. Her sides barely moved. A broken moan rattled from her throat. She was alive, barely. Kavi let out a tiny cry. The human stumbled out behind him and froze. "What the... is that? My God!" The woman's eyes widened. "It's crushing her alive." The snake's massive head lifted, tongue flickering, tasting the air. Kavi backed up, trembling, fur puffed. He wanted to scream at them, to do something, anything. But the woman stepped forward, her voice hard. "We have to get it off her." The others exchanged fearful looks. "She's a wild leopard. She'll kill us if she wakes. She's dying," the woman snapped. "And that snake will kill her anyway." She set her pack down and pulled something long and metal from it, a tranquilizer rifle. Kavi's eyes widened as she loaded it with shaking hands. "Cover me," she whispered. Kavi crouched, heart in his throat. The snake turned its cold eyes toward them. Its coils tightened. The forest held its breath. The rescue was about to begin. The woman knelt, steadying the rifle against her shoulder. The dart glinted in the moonlight. Kavi crouched low, his tiny chest heaving. His ears rang with his own heartbeat. The snake's massive head swayed slowly, its black tongue tasting the air. It had noticed them. The humans fanned out silently. One held a long pole with a hooked end, another a heavy net. They moved like ghosts among the vines. The woman exhaled slowly and fired thwick. The dart flew, striking the snake just behind its head. It hissed, a sound like tearing cloth, and reared back violently. The branch shook. Leaves exploded into the air. Kavi flattened himself to the ground as the anaconda whipped its tail. One human was knocked off his feet, crashing into a bush. The snake's coils tightened reflexively around Luma. She let out a strangled, broken roar. "No, no!" the woman shouted. "Hold it steady!" The man with the pole lunged forward, hooking it around the snake's neck just behind the dart. He planted his feet, muscles bulging, trying to pull it away. The other man leapt up the tree, scrambling onto the branch. He swung the heavy net, tangling part of the snake's body. The serpent thrashed, nearly flinging him off. "Get her out!" the woman yelled. Kavi darted forward without thinking. He leapt onto the lower trunk, claws sinking into bark, and scrambled toward his mother. The snake's tail whipped past him like a whip. He ducked, heart hammering. He reached her face, Luma's golden eyes fluttered half open. "They barely focused. Mama," he whimpered, nudging her muzzle. The woman screamed from below, "Pull her free!" The man on the branch hacked at the snake's coils with a machete, careful not to hit Luma. Scales split, dark blood spraying. The snake hissed, twisting wildly, but the tranquilizer was working. Its movements were slowing. Again! Another strike, another. Finally, the coil loosened. Kavi dug his teeth into the gap and pulled with all his strength, claws tearing at the snake's flesh. With a roar, the man yanked Luma's limp body free. They tumbled down together from the branch, crashing through leaves, landing in a heap on the moss. The snake let out a final hiss, then sagged across the branch like a fallen rope. Its coils drooped, eyes half closed. It was asleep. Kavi scrambled to Luma's side, her chest rose in shallow, trembling breaths. Her fur was soaked in blood and bruises. "She's alive," the woman gasped, dropping to her knees. She pressed her hands gently along Luma's ribs. "Broken bones. Maybe internal bleeding. Can we move her?" One man asked. "We have to. She won't survive here." They quickly unrolled a thick canvas stretcher. Kavi paced in frantic circles as they lifted Luma onto it with careful hands. She moaned weakly, her tail twitching. "She's lighter than I expected," one muttered. "She's starving," the woman said. "Probably been fighting to feed her cub." At that word, cub, she looked at Kavi. He stood close, staring up at her with wide green eyes. The woman knelt. "You did this," she whispered softly. "You brought us here." Her hand trembled as she held it out. Kavi hesitated, then pressed his small nose into her fingers. The humans hoisted Luma's stretcher. "Let's move. We can set up camp by the river and call the station for evac." The woman nodded, then looked down at Kavi. "Stay close, little one." He padded beside them as they moved through the trees, never taking his eyes off the stretcher. Behind them, high in the canopy, the tranquilized Anaconda lay coiled and silent. The mist closed around it like a shroud, but in front of them, for the first time, a fragile thread of hope wound through the dark. Mama was still alive, and Kavi had saved her. The jungle was different now. Before, it had been endless noise, insects buzzing, birds screaming, frogs croaking from every shadow. But as the rescuers carried Luma on the stretcher, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the swish of boots through ferns and the soft thud of their steps. And the weak, ragged breathing of Luma. Kavi padded silently alongside them. He stayed close enough that her scent brushed his whiskers. Her golden fur was dull now, mottled with blood. Every time the stretcher jolted, she moaned softly and Kavi's ears twitched with pain. He wanted to curl up on her chest and purr like he used to, but if he touched her broken body, it might hurt her more. So he just walked, eyes wide, tail low, guarding her with every step. At last, the trees opened. Moonlight spilled onto a sandbar by the river. "This will do," the tall man said. He wiped sweat from his face. Flat ground. Easy to defend. They lowered the stretcher gently onto the sand. The woman, the one with kind eyes, had immediately knelt by Luma, checking her wounds. "Pulse is weak. She's going into shock," she murmured. Kavi crept closer, heart pounding. He sniffed Luma's muzzle. Her breath was warm but faint. The woman pulled open her pack, hands moving quickly. Gauze, bandages, a syringe. She filled it and injected Luma's leg with something clear. "She needs fluids, antibiotics, and splints. If we don't stabilize her now, she won't make it till morning." The men unpacked gear. One raised a small collapsible tent. Another lit a portable lamp, casting pale yellow light across the sand. Shadows danced on the river's black surface. Kavi crouched nearby, watching every movement. His tail flicked anxiously. The woman worked on Luma for what felt like forever. She cleaned the wounds, wrapped her ribs, and taped splints along her forelegs. She whispered as she worked. Not words Kavi understood, but soft sounds that reminded him of Luma's purring hum when he was a newborn. "She fought so hard to stay alive," the woman said quietly. "All for you, little one." Kavi blinked at her. He wanted to tell her, "Yes, she is strong. She is my whole world. Please don't let her go." When the bandages were done, Luma's breathing steadied slightly. Her sides rose and fell in slow rhythm. The woman sat back, exhausted. Her hands were shaking. "She might make it," she whispered. Kavi pressed his nose to Luma's cheek and gave a tiny chirp. She didn't move, but her ear twitched just a little. Tears stung his eyes. She had heard him. The men built a small fire on the sand. Orange light flickered on their tired faces. They spoke in low voices about calling the rescue station at dawn. The storm-damaged radios weren't working here. The canopy was too thick. The signals too weak. They would try again when the sun rose. Kavi didn't understand their words, but he felt their tension in the air. Like the moment before lightning strikes, the woman pulled a blanket over Luma's body. Then she opened a tin of meat and placed a few pieces on the sand near Kavi. "You need strength too," she said softly. Kavi crept closer and ate quickly, licking his whiskers. His belly hurt from hunger, but his eyes never left his mother. Afterward, he curled near her paw, keeping watch. The humans went to their tents one by one, the fire crackling low. Hours passed. The jungle never truly sleeps. Far away, frogs croaked like drums. A nightbird wailed. The river gurgled dark and endless, but here on the sandbar, Kavi could hear his own breathing, and the faint, fragile sound of Luma's. He stared at her chest, watching it rise, fall, stay with me, he whispered in his heart. Please? His eyelids drooped, and then a sound, a soft splash from the black water. Kavi's eyes snapped open. His fur bristled. Another splash, closer. The river rippled, moonlight trembling on its surface. Something huge moved just under the water. Kavi rose silently, tail puffed. His tiny claws dug into the sand. A long shape slid out of the water, dripping and silent. 2 glowing eyes. A low hiss, a black caiman, 7 feet long, ancient, hungry. It crept closer, jaws opening, teeth glinting like broken glass, and it was heading straight for Luma. Kavi's body went rigid. The caiman's claws sank into the wet sand with slow, silent steps. Water slid from its armored back in black ribbons. Its eyes glowed like cold fire in the lamplight. It was close enough that Kavi could smell the rot on its breath. He glanced at the tents. The humans were asleep. The fire had burned low to glowing embers. They didn't know. They wouldn't wake in time, and if the caiman reached Luma... No, not her. Not again. Kavi's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his teeth. He crouched low, tail lashing. The caiman lowered its belly, creeping forward. Its jaws opened wider, strings of slime dripping from its teeth. Kavi hissed, a tiny, trembling sound. The caiman ignored him. It lunged. Kavi launched himself at its face. He was just a cub, but he had the fire of a full-grown leopard burning inside him. He slammed onto the caiman's snout with all his strength, claws raking across its eyes. The caiman bellowed, a horrible guttural roar, its head whipped violently, flinging Kavi into the sand. He hit hard, stars exploding in his vision. The caiman lunged again, jaws snapping. Kavi rolled aside just in time. Teeth crashed into the ground where he had been, spraying sand. He scrambled to his paws, ears flat, and leapt for its eye again. Claws struck flesh. The caiman screeched, thrashing sideways. Water splashed high from the river as its tail slammed the ground. The tents shook. One of the humans shouted groggily, "What?" But the caiman ignored them. Its eyes locked on Kavi, blazing with rage. The cub stood between it and his unconscious mother. He knew he could die, but he didn't care, because she had once fought the entire forest for him. Now it was his turn. The caiman lunged. Kavi darted under its jaws, claws tearing its throat. Blood sprayed. He spun and leapt onto its back, sinking his teeth into its neck. The caiman roared, spinning in a death roll. Kavi clung on desperately as the world blurred. "Get up!" someone shouted. Lights flared as the humans burst from their tents. "Caiman! Get the flares! Grab the tranquilizer!" The caiman snapped at Kavi, missing by inches. A sharp bang split the night. The tall man fired a flare gun. A ball of red fire screamed over the river, exploding into light. The caiman froze, stunned. The woman sprinted forward, jabbing the tranquilizer pole into its thick neck. The needle sank deep. The beast roared, spinning wildly. Kavi flew off its back, slamming into the sand. Pain shot through his body. He scrambled up, coughing, dazed. The caiman staggered, hissing, then sagged sideways into the river with a heavy splash. The black water swallowed it whole. Silence fell. The humans rushed forward. The woman dropped to her knees beside Kavi. "Are you hurt?" she gasped, though she knew he couldn't answer. Her hands hovered, trembling over his trembling body. He just stared at her, sides heaving, eyes wide. Then he turned his head. Luma was still breathing, still alive. Kavi limped to her side and curled against her, pressing his tiny body to her chest. His heart slowed. The woman let out a long, shuddering breath. "You brave little thing," she whispered. "You saved her." The tall man stared, shaking his head. "That cub fought a caiman because he loves her," the woman said softly. The fire crackled back to life. The tents glowed with warm light. Far away, thunder rumbled deep in the clouds. But here on the sand, mother and cub lay together again. Broken, bloodied, alive. And the rescuers finally understood. They weren't just saving a wild animal. They were saving a family. Dawn came like a ghost. A pale grey light seeped through the trees, washing the world in silver. Mist rose from the river in coiling tendrils, soft as smoke. Birds began to cry from the canopy. piercing, echoing notes that sounded like flutes made of bone. But the camp was still. Luma lay motionless under the blanket. Her breathing was faint but steady. The woman sat beside her, bleary-eyed from watching all night. Kavi slept curled against Luma's chest, his tiny body rising and falling with her breaths, as if willing her to keep breathing. The humans moved quietly, boiling water over the rekindled fire. Their clothes were damp, their eyes hollow from exhaustion. Yet there was a fragile glow among them now, the glow of hope. "We survived the night," the tall man said softly. "Barely," the woman replied. She brushed her hand gently down Luma's bandaged flank. "If that cub hadn't fought—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. By midday, the sun had risen high, a pale disk behind gauzy clouds. The rescuers began packing their gear. They needed to move. The radio still couldn't get a signal here. They had to reach higher ground to call the station. They loaded their supplies into waterproof packs. Then, with careful teamwork, they lifted Luma's stretcher. Kavi followed at their heels, ears twitching, tail low. The sand crunched beneath their boots as they left the riverbank and slipped back beneath the jungle's green roof. The forest swallowed them whole. The air was heavier now, hot, swollen, pressing down like a hand. Kavi felt it first, a stillness, no bird cries, no frog calls. Even the insects had gone silent. The woman paused, frowning. She tilted her head toward the sky, listening. "Do you hear that? What?" one man asked. "Nothing," she whispered. "And that's bad." A low growl of thunder rolled from far away, deep as the belly of the earth. The tall man muttered, "We have to move faster." They pushed on. Sweat streamed down their faces. The air thickened until it was hard to breathe. Then the light changed. The bright silver haze dimmed to a strange greenish glow, like old bruised glass. Shadows bled into each other. Kavi's ears flattened. He knew this color, this silence. The forest was holding its breath, and then the sky broke. The storm hit like a falling mountain. A crack of thunder split the world. The canopy exploded in whipping leaves as wind howled through the trees. Rain came down in solid sheets, hammering the ground like stones. Within seconds, the path became a river of brown water. Mud sucked at their boots. "Keep going," the woman shouted over the roar. "Don't stop!" They tried to shield Luma with their bodies as they carried her stretcher, but the rain soaked through everything. Water streamed from her fur in rivers. Kavi ran beside them, drenched to the bone. His paws splashed through rising puddles. Lightning flashed white-hot, searing his vision. The thunder slammed after like a war drum. "Careful," one man yelled. "Watch the ground!" Roots became slick snakes underfoot. Branches crashed down all around them with deafening cracks. The jungle was tearing itself apart, and the river was rising. Water began rushing around their ankles, then their knees. The sandbar behind them vanished beneath a boiling brown flood. The tall man stumbled. The stretcher lurched. Luma's head rolled limply. "Hold her steady," the woman screamed. She grabbed the stretcher pole and shoved her shoulder under it, teeth clenched. Kavi darted to her side, yowling in panic. Lightning struck a tree ahead. The world went white. The trunk exploded into splinters and fell across their path in a shower of sparks and steam. "Back! Go back!" someone yelled. But behind them the river had surged across the trail. Water rushed waist-high now, carrying logs and tangled vines. The flood roared louder than the thunder. "We're trapped!" The woman spun, frantic eyes scanning the chaos. "We need higher ground, now!" But where? Everywhere around them, the forest floor was drowning. Then Kavi saw it, a black stone ridge rising through the trees like a jagged spine. Its mossy sides climbed high above the flood, vanishing into the mist. He froze for one heartbeat. Then he ran. "Kavi!" the woman shouted. He darted up a fallen trunk, sprang across floating debris, and scrambled onto the ridge. He turned and looked down at them, soaked fur plastered to his ribs, eyes blazing like green fire. "Follow him," the woman cried. They plunged after him, water dragging at their legs, rain hammering their backs. Kavi scrambled upward, claws slipping on wet stone, and the humans hauled Luma's stretcher behind them. Lightning flashed again, so close the air sizzled, but Kavi didn't stop. He couldn't, because if they stayed down there, the river would take her, and he wasn't going to lose her now. The ridge was steeper than it looked. Water streamed down its sides in silvery ribbons. Moss came away in sheets under their boots, exposing slick black stone. Kavi bounded from ledge to ledge, claws scraping, tail whipping to balance. Behind him, the rescuers struggled upward, each step a battle against mud and gravity. "Don't drop her," the woman shouted, "just keep climbing." The tall man roared back. Their boots slipped. The stretcher tilted dangerously, swinging over the flood below. Luma moaned faintly, her head rolling to one side. Kavi yowled, racing back down to them, then back up, urging them on with frantic chirps. Rain lashed his face like claws. The storm howled around them like a living thing. Screaming through the trees, thunder cracked directly. Overhead, the ridge shook, a boulder broke loose and crashed past them into the flood with a deafening splash. The river below was now a churning ocean, swallowing trees whole. If they fell, they would be gone forever. The woman's boot slipped on the bare stone. She cried out, nearly falling backward. One man grabbed her arm just in time. "Thanks," she gasped, then gritted her teeth. "Go, go!" Kavi clawed his way to the top. His lungs burned, legs trembling. He reached a small plateau of solid rock covered in thick ferns. Wind tore at the plants, but it was above the waterline. He turned and let out the loudest roar his little body could make. The sound cut through the thunder like a knife. The rescuers looked up, saw him, and surged forward with one last burst of strength. They dragged the stretcher onto the plateau and collapsed, gasping, soaked, shaking. The wind screamed around them. Lightning flickered like strobe lights through the clouds. The ridge trembled under each thunderclap, but they were safe, for now. They collapsed in the ferns around Luma. Water streamed from her bandages. Her eyes were half open, unfocused. Her breaths were shallow. "She's freezing," the woman panted. "We have to warm her up or she'll go into shock." They tore emergency blankets from their packs, wrapping them around her trembling body. One man lit a small portable heater from his waterproof case. Its dull orange glow flickered against their soaked faces. Kavi crouched at Luma's head, licking her ears and cheeks, trying to warm her too. His tongue came away tasting of rain and blood. Her golden eyes blinked once slowly, then closed again. "Stay with me, Mama," Kavi whispered in his heart. "Don't let go." Hours crawled by. The storm roared endlessly. Wind howled through the trees like screaming ghosts. Rain hammered the ridge so hard it stung. Thunder rattled their bones. The rescuers huddled around Luma in a tight circle, using their own bodies as a windbreak. Their lamps flickered dimly in the spray. Kavi stayed pressed to her chest. He could feel her heart beating, faint but steady. Every beat was a miracle. Finally, just before dawn, the storm broke. The rain softened to a drizzle. The wind faded to whispers. The clouds thinned to ragged ghosts. A weak golden light seeped through, touching the ridge like a blessing. Steam rose from the drenched forest below. The river had grown wider, wilder, filled with shattered trees. The rescuers sat up slowly, stiff and silent, blinking at the sudden stillness. "We survived," the tall man whispered. "Thanks to him," the woman said, looking at Kavi. He lay curled against Luma, soaked fur plastered to his ribs. Eyes closed in exhaustion, she reached out and stroked his tiny head. He didn't move, but his tail twitched weakly. The forest was still dangerous. They were far from safety. The radio still didn't work this low, but for the first time hope glimmered like sunlight on wet stone. They had survived the river. They had survived the storm. And Luma, still breathing, had survived the night. The storm had left the forest in ruins. As the sun rose pale and weak, mist lifted off the trees in ghostly sheets. The ridge was slick with moss and broken twigs. Below, the Amazon stretched like a shattered mirror, its waters swollen and furious, swirling with entire uprooted trees drifting like dead giants. The rescuers stood silently on the plateau, staring out over the drowned world. They looked like survivors of a shipwreck, mud-streaked, hollow-eyed, their clothes torn from the wind. Luma lay in the center of them, wrapped in silver thermal blankets. Her breaths were still shallow but steady now. The portable heater hummed weakly beside her. The woman gently pressed her ear to Luma's chest, then let out a small, relieved sigh. "She's holding on," she whispered. "Then we move," the tall man said. His voice was hoarse but firm. "Before the sun climbs and the heat makes this place a swamp." They all nodded. And just behind Luma's shoulders, Kavi stirred. He uncurled slowly, his little body trembling with exhaustion. Water dripped from his whiskers. His green-gold eyes opened and locked on his mother's face. Her eyes were still closed. He pressed his nose to hers gently. "I'm not stopping," he thought fiercely. "I'll get you out of here. I swear it." They secured Luma to the stretcher again. The ropes creaked as they tightened the knots. Every movement was slow, cautious. Her life hung by threads and they all knew it. Then they began their descent. The ridge fell away in a jagged black spine. Rain had washed away most of the moss, leaving bare slick stone. Water still ran down in silver streams, hissing where it hit the sun-warmed rocks below. The rescuers climbed down backward, boots slipping. The stretcher had to be lowered 1 painful meter at a time with ropes. Kavi moved ahead of them, leaping from rock to rock. His paws found invisible holds. He kept glancing back, eyes burning like green fire, urging them to follow. Halfway down, disaster struck. The ground shifted under the tall man's boots with a sickening crunch. He froze. Then the whole ledge gave way. "Move!" The woman screamed. Stone exploded beneath them. The man dropped to his knees, clinging to the rope. Mud and rock roared past his legs like a river. The stretcher swung wildly over the void. Luma's limp body jolted. One of her bandages came loose, seeping red through the silver blanket. "Grab her! Grab her!" someone yelled. The woman lunged and caught the stretcher pole just before it slipped from its hook. The rope burned her hands raw, but she didn't let go. Kavi scrambled down the cliffside like lightning, claws biting into the slick rock. He launched himself onto the swinging stretcher and dug his claws into the blanket, anchoring it with his weight. The woman and the others hauled desperately on the rope. Mud sprayed into their eyes. Their boots skidded inches from the drop, then hit with a wet tearing sound as the mudslide passed. They collapsed against the stone, gasping. Luma lay still. Blood trickled from her reopened wound. "She's bleeding again," the woman panted. Her voice trembled with fear. "We have to stop it." She tore open her medkit, hands shaking, and pressed thick gauze into the wound. Blood soaked it almost instantly. Kavi crouched beside her, tail twitching violently, his small body shaking. His eyes stayed locked on Luma's face, waiting for her to breathe again. A minute passed, then her chest rose, shallow, but steady. "She's still with us," the woman whispered. They all went still, staring at her in awe. "She's stronger than she looks," said the tall man hoarsely, "just like her cub." Kavi blinked at them, rain dripping from his whiskers, and let out a tiny rasping chirp. It sounded like pride. They moved on, shaken but determined. By noon they had reached the jungle floor again. The air down here was different, wet and heavy, like breathing through a soaked cloth. Steam rose from the ground in white curls. Every leaf glittered with water, but something else had changed. The forest was quiet, too quiet. The storm had smashed the jungle apart. Broken branches hung like broken bones. The ground was littered with shredded nests, scattered feathers, dead frogs, and bloated insects. The canopy above was ripped open, spilling harsh sunlight down in strange golden shafts. Kavi padded ahead, fur bristling. Every sound made his ears flick. He smelled danger in the stillness. The rescuers whispered to each other behind him. "No birds," one said. "Not a single call." "That's not right," said another. "Even after a storm." "Stay sharp," the woman ordered. "This place will be crawling with scavengers now." They crossed a fallen tree bridging a ravine. The log was slick and slimy, crawling with blue beetles. One man slipped and almost fell into the mud far below, saved only by grabbing a vine. Kavi darted across the log easily, but froze halfway. His tail went stiff. His ears shot up, then he hissed. Something moved beneath the log, a sinuous ripple in the shadows. "Snake!" the woman shouted. A giant pit viper erupted from the mud, striking upward. Its fangs sank into empty air where Kavi's head had been a split second earlier. He launched himself off the log and landed on the far side, back arched, claws out. The rescuers reeled back, screaming. One man swung his machete. The blade slammed into the viper's neck, severing its spine in a spray of black blood. It fell back into the ravine, thrashing. The forest went silent again. Everyone just stared at Kavi. The woman's voice shook. He saved us. Kavi just stared back with his burning green eyes, breathing fast. Then he turned and padded on as if nothing had happened. They trudged through the ruined jungle for hours, jumping at every shadow. The air was thick with the sweet, rotten smell of crushed plants. Mosquitoes swarmed their faces like living smoke. Their muscles ached. Their stomachs growled. But they kept moving because Luma still breathed, and Kavi still led the way. By late afternoon, the light began to change again, growing dimmer, greener, as if they were walking underwater. The jungle had thickened around them, closing in like walls. Gigantic roots twisted across the path, like the arms of buried monsters. Lianas hung like dead snakes from the canopy. Every few steps, they heard faint cracking sounds deep in the shadows, as if something huge was following. Even the rescuers' voices grew hushed. They moved like ghosts. Then Kavi stopped dead. His ears flicked. His eyes widened. The woman froze. "What is it?" Kavi sniffed the air. His tail quivered. Then he ran forward, straight toward a wall of hanging vines. The rescuers hurried after him, machetes slicing the vines aside, and then they saw it. An ancient ranger station stood hidden in the jungle, half-eaten by time. Its wooden walls were black with mold. Vines crawled through shattered windows. The roof sagged under the weight of ferns. One wall had completely collapsed, revealing rusted bed frames and overturned tables inside. A faded sign lay on the ground near the entrance. Its letters were barely visible under moss. Amazon Biological Research Outpost, closed 1974. The rescuers just stared. "We found it," the tall man whispered. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "We can call for help here." They pushed inside. The air smelled of dust and wet leaves. The floor creaked under their boots. Bats scattered from the rafters with shrill squeals. Sunlight speared through holes in the roof, painting everything in dusty gold. They cleared a space on an old table and set Luma's stretcher on it gently. "Her fur was cold to the touch. She's fading," the woman whispered. "We need to get the radio working now." One of the men pried open a metal cabinet. Inside, covered in webs, was an old military-style field radio. Its metal was rusted but intact. They scrambled to set it up, hands trembling with urgency. Batteries, antenna, power crank. Kavi watched them from Luma's side, tail curled tightly around his paws. His ears flicked nervously at every sound. Finally, the radio crackled to life. "Base, this is Outpost Echo," the tall man said into the mic. His voice broke with relief. "We've found her. Injured female leopard, severe trauma, blood loss. We need immediate extraction. I repeat, immediate extraction." The static roared. Then a voice, thin, crackling. "Copy, coordinates, helicopter in 6 hours." The rescuers sagged with relief. Some even laughed out loud, weak with exhaustion. Kavi didn't move. He just pressed his forehead to Luma's cheek. 6 hours. 6 hours and she might be saved. But the jungle was not finished with them. As darkness bled through the trees outside, a new sound began. Low, distant and terrible, a deep thrumming. Like drums made of bone, the woman's smile faded. "What is that?" Kavi's ears went flat. His fur bristled. The drums grew louder, closer, and then, from the broken doorway, 2 yellow eyes glowed in the dark. Darkness rolled over the Amazon like ink. Inside the rotting ranger station, the rescuers froze. The air seemed to solidify around them. Only the steady beep of the portable heart monitor, Luma's heartbeat, pulsed in the silence. Outside, the jungle whispered. Leaves rustled without wind. Water dripped in the distance like footsteps. Then they saw them. 2 perfect circles of molten gold hanging in the black. Doorway eyes huge, unblinking, staring. Straight at them. The woman's throat tightened. Her hand hovered near her machete. "Do not move," she whispered. Kavi didn't move. He stood on Luma's stretcher, fur puffed, tail lashing silently, pupils slitted to green needles. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them before, from the safety of his mother's side, deep in the ancient forest shadows. Jaguar. A black jaguar. It stepped into the doorway like liquid shadow. Its fur was midnight, soaked in moonlight. Black spots shimmered like oil on its shoulders. It was enormous, broader than Luma, heavier than any predator they had seen. Its paws made no sound on the wet wooden floor. Its breath steamed in the cold air. It stopped 3 steps inside the room. The rescuers stood like statues. Their chests rose and fell in slow, shallow gasps. Sweat ran down their faces despite the chill. The jaguar's nose twitched. Its head turned slightly. Toward the stretcher. Toward Luma. Kavi hissed, low and venomous. The sound was almost lost under the thundering of the rescuers' hearts. The black jaguar's golden eyes flicked to him, and for a moment, something passed between them. A ripple of recognition. A predator acknowledging another predator. Even if small, even if trembling, then it bared its teeth. Long and curved and pale as bone, Kavi's claws unsheathed with a whisper. His whole body went still. Every muscle locked. His tail stood like a spear. He was ready to die. The woman's hand trembled on her machete hilt. "If it lunges, we all—" "Shh," the tall man hissed. "Don't provoke it." The jaguar moved, just one step, silent as falling ash. The floor creaked. Luma stirred, her eyes fluttered weakly open. For half a second they met Kavi's. He saw the faintest spark inside them, fear, pain, and defiance. Then they closed again, but that was enough. The jaguar lowered its head, muscles bunching. It was going to strike, Kavi screamed, a raw feral sound that sliced the silence to ribbons. Then he launched himself off the stretcher. He hit the floor like lightning and ran directly at the black jaguar, tail streaming, fangs bared. The jaguar roared. The sound shook the building. It lashed a paw the size of a human head at him. Kavi ducked. The claws tore a furrow through the floor where his skull had been. He scrambled between its legs, raking his claws across its belly. Blood splashed hot and black. The jaguar spun with terrifying speed. Its teeth snapped inches from Kavi's tail. Kavi shot up a collapsed wall beam, claws sparking on wood. The jaguar followed in a blur of muscle. Boards exploded under its weight. The rescuers moved all at once, stun lights. "Now," the woman barked. They yanked open their packs, ripped out flare sticks and flashbangs. The tall man hurled one at the ceiling. It detonated with a sunburst crack. White fire filled the room. The jaguar shrieked, rearing back. Smoke and splinters showered down. Kavi leapt from the beam, landed on the stretcher and crouched over Luma again, claws out, chest heaving. The jaguar stumbled blindly, eyes seared by light. It slammed into the wall, snapping boards like matchsticks. "Drive it out!" the woman yelled. They screamed and banged metal pots, flares blazing in their fists. The black jaguar roared, ears flat from pain. Then it spun and bolted out into the night like a phantom, vanishing between the trees. Silence rushed back in like a wave. Only the faint crackle of dying flares remained. And the sound of Kavi's ragged panting. The rescuers slowly lowered their weapons. Their hands shook. One man's knees gave out and he collapsed, sobbing silently in relief. The woman knelt by the stretcher. Luma was still breathing. "You, little warrior," she whispered to Kavi. "You stood against death itself." Kavi didn't look at her. He just stared at the dark doorway where the jaguar had gone, his green eyes burning like coals. Outside, the jungle whispered again. Somewhere in the distance, drums still throbbed faintly through the trees, as if mocking them. But for now they were alive, and so was Luma. Hours crawled like wounded snakes. The station was cloaked in blackness now. The rescuers sat in a rough circle around Luma's table, dim headlamps glowing like dying stars. Their faces were hollow, their eyes red. Fatigue clung to them like cobwebs. Rain drummed softly on the sagging roof. Wind sighed through shattered windows. The radio hissed on the table, repeating the last faint transmission. Helicopter inbound. ETA 3 hours. 3 hours. They only had to survive 3 more hours. But the jungle had changed. Even with the jaguar gone, something felt wrong. The woman felt it first. A pressure in the air. A strange scent. Metallic, like lightning trapped in leaves. She frowned, scanning the rafters. "Stay awake," she whispered. "No one sleeps." "Understand?" They nodded silently. Kavi crouched by Luma's head, still as stone. His ears twitched at every creak. His tail lay flat, unmoving. Luma's breathing rattled faintly. Her fur was clammy with fever. A thin tremor rippled through her legs now and then. "She's getting weaker," the tall man murmured. "We have to keep her warm." "Blankets," said the woman. "Hot packs. Keep her blood moving." They worked silently, layering heat packs along her sides, wrapping her in dry thermal cloths. Kavi climbed onto her back and curled up tight. pressing his warmth into her with all his tiny body could give, and all the while, something watched them. The sound came just past midnight, a faint creak. Above them, high in the black rafters, everyone froze. The tall man slowly lifted his headlamp. Its beams sliced through cobwebs and rotten boards. Nothing. He lowered it. Then another sound, closer, like claws scraping wood. The woman mouthed one word. Up! They all tilted their lights and the rafters blinked. Two eyes glowed down at them from the beams. Smaller than the jaguars, sharper, cold, amber, hungry. Then they multiplied. 4, 6, 10, all at once. A dozen pairs of eyes shimmered in the black beams above like stars reflected in oil. Monkeys? One man whispered. No, said the woman. Too still. The rafters hissed. Something pale and long and jointed scuttled between the beams with impossible speed. A giant spider. No, many. As big as house cats, their hairy legs hooked like knives. Their fangs dripped strands of glistening venom. One dropped silently onto the floorboards behind the group. Kavi saw it first. He spun, fur exploding, and screamed. A high, piercing cry of rage. The thing lunged. Chaos. The rescuers leapt to their feet, weapons flashing. The spider hit the ground where they'd been sitting and shattered the wood with its weight. Its fangs slammed into the boards and hissed, burning holes through the planks. More poured down from the rafters, dropping like stones. The room exploded with thrashing legs and flying webs. Kavi launched off Luma's back, slamming into the first spider's face. His claws ripped across its eyes. Black ichor splattered. It shrieked like tearing metal and flailed, smashing through a table. The woman swung her machete. One spider split in half, legs twitching. Another leapt at her face and she ducked, feeling its fangs slash her hood. Protect Luma, she screamed. Kavi fought like a demon. He was a blur of teeth and claws, ripping eyes and severing legs, his tiny body moving with wild precision. Venom burned the floor where droplets fell around him, but there were too many. One slammed into his side mid-leap, hurling him across the room. He smashed into the wall and crumpled, wheezing. Kavi! The woman cried. The spider skittered toward him, jaws opening. Kavi staggered to his paws. Blood ran from his ear. His hind leg shook, but his eyes burned like green fire. He darted forward and jammed his claws into the spider's mouth just as it bit down. The fangs snapped shut on its own face. Bone cracked. It screeched, legs spasming. Kavi wrenched himself free as the creature collapsed in a twitching heap. The rescuers hacked and smashed with machetes and chair legs. One man lit a flare and swung it like a torch, driving the spiders back into the shadows. They hissed and scattered, climbing the walls in streaks of pale horror. Then suddenly, silence. The last few vanished into the night through the broken roof. The station was wrecked, splintered tables. Black venom burned smoking in the floor. Blood streaked across the walls, some of it human, some not. The rescuers collapsed, panting, trembling, covered in sweat and ichor. Kavi limped to Luma and curled against her side again. His breathing was ragged. His fur was torn and bloody, but she was safe, still alive. The woman crouched beside them. Her voice was barely a whisper. He's not just trying to save her, she said. He's fighting the whole jungle. The tall man nodded, eyes wide. And he's winning. The radio crackled again. Helicopter inbound. ETA 2 hours. They stared at it, exhausted. 2 hours. Just 2 more. If they could survive that long. Time crawled. The broken station was silent except for 3 sounds. The soft hiss of the portable heater, the faint beep of the heart monitor, and the ragged breathing of the humans slumped in the wreckage. And under all of it, like a thread woven through the dark, was Luma's breath. Slow, uneven, fainter than ever. The storm was long gone, but the night clung to the jungle like tar. No wind, no birds, no frogs. The world was holding its breath again. Kavi lay curled against Luma's neck. He had not closed his eyes once. Every muscle was taut, coiled like a spring. His torn ear bled slowly down his cheek, and his ribs rose and fell too fast, but he stayed, his tiny warmth against her huge, cooling body. A spark guarding an ember. The woman sat across from them, back against a crumbling wall. Her hands shook violently. She kept checking her watch, muttering under her breath, 1 hour 50. Just hold on, just hold on. Her voice cracked. The tall man staggered to his feet, stiff with exhaustion. He rummaged through their soaked packs. "We're out of heat packs. We've got 2 energy bars, 1 flare, half a canteen of clean water." "Then ration it," the woman said, eyes fixed on Luma. "Nothing else matters but keeping her alive." Another rescuer, and the youngest, rubbed his face and whispered, "What if she doesn't make it?" "She will," the woman snapped, sharper than she meant. Then softer, "She has to." Kavi's ears flicked. He didn't know their words, but he knew their tones, fear, hopelessness. He stood slowly. His legs trembled, but he walked to the empty heater, sniffing it, then back to the woman. He nudged her arm with his head. She blinked. "What is it, little warrior?" He turned and trotted to the broken wall where vines curled down like ropes. He sniffed the night air, muscles taut. "He wants to go out," the young man said. "No," the woman said instantly. "It's too dangerous." Kavi looked back at her and growled, not loud, but deep, certain. The woman's heart squeezed. That growl wasn't wild. It was determined, like he understood what he had to do. She stared at him. "He's going to hunt," she whispered. "He wants to bring her food," the tall man said. "If he goes out there, he won't survive." Kavi growled again, louder. And then he leapt out the broken wall into the jungle night. The forest swallowed him instantly. Darkness pressed on every side. His paws sank into rotting leaves. The air was cold, wet, sharp with the smell of blood and mold. He moved low to the ground, every step silent. His torn ear throbbed. Every muscle burned, but he moved, because Luma needed strength. And if he could not fight the jungle for her, then he would feed her with his own claws. Moonlight leaked through the canopy in thin silver stripes. The storm's ruins were everywhere. Toppled trees, drowned birds, broken nests, shredded orchids hanging like pale ghosts. Kavi's whiskers twitched. His stomach cramped from hunger, but he pushed it down. Focus, a rustle. Left side. He froze, crouched low. A capybara, huge, slow, grazing on fallen fruit in a small clearing. Its fur was soaked, its eyes dull from exhaustion. Perfect. Kavi slunk forward through ferns, muscles rippling like liquid shadow. Every paw step silent, every nerve screaming with purpose. Closer, closer. His claws slid out, then the wind shifted. The capybara's ears flicked. Its head whipped around. Kavi launched. He hit its flank like a thrown dagger, teeth sinking into its neck. The creature bellowed, thrashing. It was 10 times his size. It bucked and slammed him into the ground. Pain burst through his ribs. The air shot from his lungs, but he did not let go. He clamped down harder, claws raking, teeth digging deeper. Hot blood filled his mouth. The capybara crashed sideways, legs kicking wildly, then went still. Kavi staggered up, sides heaving, blood dripping from his jaws. He had done it. A single cub had brought down a giant. He dragged the meat back through the jungle, inch by agonizing inch. His paws slipped in the blood-slick mud. His muscles screamed. The world tilted from exhaustion, but he kept going, step by step, breath by breath, because she needed him. When he finally stumbled through the broken wall of the station, dawn light was just bleeding into the trees, pale gold through torn clouds. The rescuers jerked awake, eyes widening. "Oh my God," the young man whispered. He hunted. Kavi dropped the kill at Luma's paws and collapsed beside her, chest heaving, blood and mud streaked across his fur. The woman's hands flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "He's saving her," she whispered. "He's really saving her." They carved strips of meat, warmed them gently on their heater, and placed them by Luma's mouth. Her nose twitched faintly. Then, slow, trembling, her jaws opened. She took one bite. It was small, weak, barely a chew, but it was life. As she swallowed, the sun rose over the Amazon like a golden wound. Light spilled through the shattered station. For the first time, Kavi closed his eyes. The radio hissed. "Helicopter inbound. ETA 40 minutes. Relief rippled through the rescuers like wind through dry leaves. "She's eaten. She's breathing stronger," the woman said, eyes bright. "We just have to hold on." The tall man smiled weakly. "We're almost there." But Kavi did not relax. He stood in the doorway, tail low, ears forward, eyes burning green. His torn ear flicked. His whiskers quivered at the breeze. Something moved in the jungle, something vast, silent, circling. He could smell it. The black jaguar, The forest had gone still again. No bird calls. No insects. Even the river's roar seemed muffled, like the world itself was crouching. A shadow shifted between the trees. The woman's smile faded. He feels something. The tall man followed her gaze. Oh no. Then they saw it. A ripple of darkness sliding between the boles of trees. Two golden eyes burning low in the ferns. The black jaguar stepped into the clearing. It was soaked, scarred, and furious. Blood matted its belly from Kavi's earlier strike. Its lips curled back from yellow fangs. Its chest heaved like a furnace. It had followed them, waited for night to weaken them, and now it had come to finish it. Kavi, the woman whispered, come inside. But he didn't move. He stood on the cracked station steps, tail lashing slowly, shoulders rigid. His tiny frame looked like a shadow painted on stone. The jaguar prowled forward, silent as silk, massive paws sinking into moss. It made no sound. It stopped 10 paces from Kavi. The world held its breath, then the jaguar lunged. It hit like an avalanche. Wood splintered under its weight. Claws carved furrows through the steps where Kavi had been a heartbeat earlier. Kavi shot sideways, a blur of fire. He slammed into its face, claws raking across its nose. Blood sprayed. The jaguar roared and spun, jaws snapping. The rescuers screamed, "Flare! Flares now!" The tall man lit one and hurled it. It bounced off the jaguar's shoulder and burst in red fire. The beast didn't flinch. It lunged again. Kavi ran straight under its chest, twisting mid-air, ripping its inner leg with his claws. The jaguar shrieked, whirled, tail lashing like a whip. The woman grabbed a machete. We can't let it reach her. We can't let it get to Luma. They charged from the station, yelling, swinging, sparks flying off the machete blades. The jaguar reared up and batted one man aside like a doll. He hit the wall and collapsed. Kavi leapt at its face again, but it caught him this time. Its jaws snapped around his body. The world stopped. The woman screamed, "No!" Kavi writhed, claws slashing blindly, but the jaws crushed tighter. Blood burst from his side. His scream was thin, desperate, cracking. Then he went still, just for a second. And in that second he twisted. His back legs coiled and he launched inside its mouth, shoving his claws up into the roof of its throat. His body disappeared almost completely inside its jaws. The jaguar gagged. Blood gushed from its nose and mouth. It roared a hideous choked sound and thrashed violently. Then it threw him out. Kavi hit the ground hard. He did not get up. The jaguar staggered. Blood streamed from its jaws. It hissed, snarled, and turned, limping, half collapsing, and vanished into the trees, black smoke melting into black shadows. Silence crashed down. "Kavi?" the woman whispered. He lay still. Tiny chest rising faintly, fur soaked in blood, one eye half closed, glassy. The woman ran to him, falling to her knees. She pressed her hands gently to his ribs. "He's alive," she gasped. Tears spilled from her eyes. "Oh God, he's alive." Luma stirred on the table. Her head lifted weakly. Her golden eyes cracked open. She saw him, and for the first time since the attack in the river, she made a sound, a low, broken, trembling rumble, a mother's call. Kavi twitched. His ears flicked. He turned his head painfully toward her. Then, with agonizing slowness, he crawled across the floorboards and pressed his bloody nose to hers. Their foreheads touched, mother and son. Two broken survivors. And as the helicopter blades began to thunder faintly in the distance, the rescuers stood frozen, tears running silently down their dirt-streaked faces. Because they were witnessing something greater than survival. They were witnessing love. The distant thunder of blades grew louder, rising through the endless green sea of trees. At first, it was only a faint whisper, a tremble in the leaves. Then the sound thickened, becoming a rolling growl. Ferns quivered. The canopy shivered. The rescuers looked up sharply. The woman clutched the radio. "They're coming. They're really coming!" The youngest man gave a broken laugh, half sob, half relief. "We made it. Oh God, we made it." But Kavi did not move. He lay in a small pool of his own blood beside Luma, chest rising shallow and fast. Every breath rattled like dry leaves. His fur was stiff with mud and scarlet streaks. Luma, barely able to lift her head, nuzzled him weakly. A rumble rose from her throat, soft, cracked like a ghost of her old roar. The woman knelt by them, eyes burning. "They'll lift you both out. Just hold on, little warrior. Just a little longer. The jungle stirred as the helicopter broke through the clouds, a dull grey shape, beating the air like an iron heart, sunlight flashing off its windows. Its roar rolled across the treetops, scattering birds in panicked flocks. But something else stirred too. In the distance, deep within the trees, a low tremor rumbled through the ground. It was faint, like distant thunder underground. The woman frowned. "Did you feel that?" The tall man nodded slowly, eyes narrowing at the trembling vines. "Yeah." Then the youngest man whispered, "The river." They all turned. The river that wound past the ruined station was swollen and angry from the storm. Logs still spun in its foaming water, but now the water itself was shifting strangely, bulging, rippling, as if something massive was moving beneath it. The helicopter hovered overhead. The downdraft roared like a hurricane, whipping leaves into whirling green blizzards. The rescuers waved frantically. The winch cable dropped down like a silver thread, moved them fast. The pilot barked over the radio. Weather turning again. 10 minutes, Max." The rescuers grabbed the stretcher they had rigged from broken wood and rope. They gently rolled Luma onto it, tying her with belts and cord. She stirred faintly, golden eyes slitting open but did not resist. "Easy, easy," the woman whispered, hands trembling. "For you're going home." Kavi stirred as they lifted her. His body flinched from the vibration. He tried to rise and collapsed again, a strangled cry slipping from his throat. The woman's heart shattered. "We can't leave him, we won't," the tall man said. He pulled off his own jacket, wrapping Kavi like a baby. The tiny cub whimpered, eyes glassy, tail twitching weakly. As they clipped Luma's stretcher to the winch, the ground trembled harder. "Earthquake?" The youngest man shouted. "No," the tall man said slowly, staring at the river. "Something's coming." The water exploded. A mountain of scales erupted from the river like a nightmare, green-black, glistening, gliding higher and higher. It was the giant Anaconda, twice as thick as a man, eyes like cold copper coins. Its body shimmered like wet armor. It had followed them and it had come for Luma. "Get her up now," the woman screamed. The helicopter engine howled as the winch began rising, lifting the stretcher through whipping debris. The Anaconda lunged. Water shattered around it in a wall of white foam. Its jaws opened wide enough to swallow Luma whole. The tall man hurled a flare. It hit the snake's snout and burst in scarlet fire. The beast recoiled with a hiss that shook the air, but then it lunged again. Its massive coils slammed around the stretcher mid-air. Luma roared, a broken, hollow roar, but defiant. The stretcher swung wildly as the snake wrapped tighter, pulling it back down. The cable groaned. "She'll fall," the pilot yelled. The rescuers ran forward, hacking at the coils with machetes. Steel clanged on armor-hard scales. Sparks flew. The snake shrieked, lashing its tail like a tree trunk. One blow smashed a rescuer off his feet, hurling him across the ground. The cable jerked. The stretcher dropped 2 meters. Luma screamed, claws ripping through the rope. And then, Kavi moved. He slipped out of the jacket like a shadow and limped forward, every step agony. His eyes blazed with wild green fire. He leapt onto the snake's back. His claws sank into its wet hide. He raked and bit and screamed, a ragged sound like tearing metal. The snake whipped and thrashed, coils loosening for a heartbeat. It was enough. The woman swung her machete with a scream, severing the coil around the stretcher. The winch whined and lifted fast, pulling Luma clear. The snake howled, blood spraying. Kavi was still clinging to its neck. "No, Kavi!" the woman screamed, tears streaming down her face. The Anaconda reared, flung him like a rag, and vanished back into the river with an explosion of water, gone as fast as it came. The jungle fell silent. The woman dropped to her knees, shaking violently. "He's gone. Oh God, he's gone." Then a sound, a tiny broken cough. They turned. Kavi lay half in the mud, soaked, shivering, barely breathing, but alive. The tall man scooped him up, clutching him to his chest as the helicopter roared down the cable again. "2 survivors," he rasped. "We're not leaving without both." The helicopter skidded lower through the shredded clearing, blowing leaves like torn confetti. The cable swung wildly, now carrying Luma high above the station. The sun hit her golden fur and she glowed like a fallen star. The rescuers strapped Kavi inside a small medical sling, tucking him close to the woman's chest. His heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. "Hold him tight," the tall man said. His voice broke. The woman nodded, jaw set. "I won't let go." They clipped themselves to the harness and the helicopter lifted, rising above the ruins of the station. The jungle spread beneath them like an endless emerald ocean, still dripping with storm rain, steaming under the newborn sun. As they rose higher, they saw the truth of the destruction. Kilometers of forest lay flattened like broken matchsticks. Black scars of burned trees cut through the green. The river still churned with debris and foam. From up here it looked like the earth itself had been wounded. And yet, life moved. Flocks of parrots swirled out of the canopy, screeching color back into the world. Monkeys swung from shattered trees, calling to each other. Frogs chirped in drowned pools. The jungle was broken, but alive, just like them. Luma dangled from her cable below, eyes half shut, body limp. But she was breathing. Her sides rose and fell with each gust of wind. The woman cradled Kavi tighter. His fur was crusted with blood and river mud, but his eyes were open. Barely. Faint green glimmers beneath heavy lids. She whispered into his ear. "She's safe, little warrior. You did it. You saved her." A weak rumble vibrated against her chest. Kavi was purring. The helicopter banked east, flying toward the rescue camp on the far side of the Amazon. The air grew brighter, cleaner, slicing through clouds. Wind ripped through the open door, stinging their faces. The radio crackled. "Camp clearing for landing. Medical ready. Estimated time, 7 minutes. Copy," the tall man said. He wiped his eyes quickly before anyone saw. Below them, the forest curved away into endless green. But the woman kept her eyes on only two things: Luma, drifting between life and death, and Kavi, refusing to die, refusing to sleep, refusing to let go. And as she held him, something strange and powerful grew inside her. It was not just awe, not just relief. It was devotion. She realized she would burn down the entire jungle if it meant keeping these two souls alive. Minutes blurred like seconds. The camp appeared through the trees, white tents, smoking chimneys, flags whipping in the rotor wash. People ran out waving. The helicopter dropped into the clearing. Dust and leaves exploded upward. The skid slammed down, the rescuers unhooked, rushing out into the chaos. "Medical. Medical now!" The woman screamed, clutching Kavi. "Get the mother first!" The tall man shouted. Dozens of hands grabbed the stretcher. They rolled Luma toward the tents, machines beeping, hoses snaking out. The woman followed, holding Kavi as if he were the beating heart of the world. As they vanished under the white canvas, the jungle winds howled behind them and were gone. Outside, far down the river, a black shape watched from the tree line. Golden eyes burned once in the shadows. The black jaguar turned, silent, and melted back into the forest. The rescue camp blazed with noise and movement. Generators throbbed, lights buzzed, voices barked orders. The smell of antiseptic fought with the thick wet, smell of jungle mud and blood, and at the center of it all, under a glowing white canvas tent, lay Luma. They had placed her on a massive metal table, padded with thick blankets. Bright lamps burned overhead, hot and clinical. Tubes snaked into her forelegs, pumping fluids and antibiotics. Sensors clung to her ribs, blinking softly. A ventilator hissed beside her head like the whisper of a ghost. Her chest rose, fell, slow. So slow it made the woman's stomach twist each time she counted. Kavi lay curled on her lap in the corner. His fur was scrubbed clean of blood, but bandages covered his ribs and his shoulder. He looked impossibly small against the vast canvas walls. He hadn't closed his eyes. Every time Luma's chest paused for a heartbeat too long, his head shot up and he let out a thin cry, not a roar, not even a meow, just a trembling thread of sound. Then he would creep to her side, press his tiny head to her massive paw, and stay there until the monitors beeped again. The woman watched him with red-rimmed eyes. She hadn't slept either. Veterinarians moved around them like shadows, voices low and urgent. Her temperature is stabilizing. Barely. Heart rate's erratic. She's lost nearly 40% of her blood volume. She's strong. If she makes it through the night, she might... Might isn't enough, the woman snapped, sharper than she meant. Do more. The vet looked at her. We're already past the line of possible. She's not just a patient, the woman whispered. She's a mother. The vet said nothing. but his eyes softened. The hours blurred. Outside the tent, rain began again, soft, misty, whispering across the canvas like ghostly fingers. The jungle croaked and chirped cautiously beyond the floodlights. Helicopters droned away in the distance, fading toward the horizon. Inside, time was frozen. Every second was just Luma's breath. Every second was just hoping for one more. Near midnight, Luma's breathing stuttered. Alarms shrieked. Monitors flashed red. "She's crashing!" Someone yelled. The tent exploded with movement. Syringes, masks, shouted codes. The ventilator roared like a dragon. The woman stood frozen, clutching Kavi to her chest so tightly he squeaked in pain. Luma's body convulsed once, limbs jerking, and then she went still. The monitors screamed flatline. The woman felt her heart break in her chest. The air collapsed out of her. The world tilted and shrank. "No," she whispered. "No, no, 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 no." Kavi twisted from her arms before she could stop him. He ran. He scrambled up the table, claws scraping steel. The vets tried to pull him off, but he wriggled like fire slipping through their hands. He climbed to Luma's head, pressing his forehead to hers, eyes wide and blazing. A sound rose from his throat. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't a roar. It was something older. Something raw. A vibration that seemed to tremble the air. A cub's broken call, carrying the echo of every ancestor who had ever refused to let go. It shivered through the tent like a living thing, and then Luma's ear twitched. A tiny tremor rippled through her massive body. One claw flexed. The monitor stuttered, then beeped once, then again. Faint but real. The vets froze. Then they lunged into action, reattaching tubes, flooding her with oxygen, shouting new numbers. The woman sagged to her knees, hands over her face. Tears fell hot and fast. "She heard him," she whispered. "Oh my God." She heard him. Kavi stayed pressed to her face until her heartbeat found its rhythm again, and when it did, he curled into the crook of her neck and finally closed his eyes. They lay like that for hours, two shattered souls, wrapped in wires and blankets and the glow of machines, holding each other like pieces of the same broken star. Outside, the jungle sang softly to the night, and for the first time, hope sang with it. Morning came slow and pale. Golden sunlight seeped through the canvas, turning the tent into a dim, glowing shell. The rain had stopped. Outside, parrots screeched and capuchin monkeys bickered in the treetops. The camp smelled of wet earth and disinfectant. The world was moving again, but inside the tent, time still hovered between heartbeats. The woman woke, slumped in a chair, her back screaming with pain. A blanket had slipped from her shoulders. Her mouth was dry, her eyes burning. Then she saw them, and everything else vanished. Luma lay exactly where she had been. But something had changed. Her chest rose deeper, stronger. Her whiskers twitched. Her tail gave the faintest slow sweep across the blankets. And Kavi was standing. He stood on the table, legs shaking, head high. His bandages were loose, fur rumpled, eyes bright green and blazing. He looked at his mother as if willing her to rise from death by sheer force of love. The woman's throat closed. "Good morning, little warrior," she whispered. The vets moved softly around her. Voices hushed. "She's fighting. Kidneys are stabilizing, muscle tone improving, heart rhythm stronger. She might just make it." The woman swallowed hard. "Not might," she said. "She will." Kavi padded closer to Luma's face. He touched her nose gently with his own, then curled against her cheek and purred, loud, deep like a motor. The sound rolled through her skull, and her eyes opened. The room went silent. Golden eyes. Faint, dull, but open. They stared at the ceiling, blinking slowly, trying to focus. Then they turned and found him. Kavi froze. His purr stuttered. Luma's gaze locked on her cub. For a long moment, neither moved. No one breathed. Then her head tilted just a fraction, and she made a sound, a low, hoarse rumble. Mother's voice. The voice of the wild. Kavi squeaked and pressed his face into her fur. His whole body shook. His tail lashed wildly. The vets laughed and cried all at once. The woman clapped a trembling hand over her mouth to smother her sob. "She knows him," she whispered. "She knows him." They stayed like that for hours. Luma's eyes drifted open and closed, always returning to him. Her tail tapped weakly each time he purred. Kavi would not leave her side. not even to eat or drink. He curled under her chin like a heartbeat she had forgotten she had, and slowly, her strength grew. She drank water. 80 small strips of meat lifted her head an inch. By afternoon, she was trying to sit up despite the cords and protests of the vets. "She's not going to rest," the woman said softly. "Not until she walks with him again." That night, the camp fell quiet. The generators hummed. The jungle crooned. Stars spilled like cold fire over the black canopy. Inside the tent, Luma and Kavi slept curled together at last, breathing the same slow rhythm, and the woman watched them, her heart full of something she didn't have a name for, something older than words, older than fear, older than even the jungle. Love pure, wild love. The jungle waited. It stretched around the rescue camp in endless green silence, as though holding its breath. High in the canopy, spider monkeys clung to the vines, watching the human world with suspicious eyes. Scarlet macaws flared through shafts of sunlight, their wings blazing fire red against the sky. Beyond the camp's thin perimeter fences lay the place Luma had once ruled, the ancient, untamed cathedral of her bloodline. And now, after 20 long days, the woman stood at the edge of the tent and whispered, "She's ready." Inside, Luma stood, not just stood, towered. Her golden coat shone again, rippling over her shoulders like molten sunlight. Muscles bunched beneath her fur. Her wounds had knitted into scars, pale lightning strikes across her flanks. Her eyes glowed bright amber, steady and fierce. She was still thin, still healing, but she was alive more than alive. She was fire. Kavi padded at her feet, bandages gone, his fur sleek and clean. He had grown taller, longer, his paws almost too big for his body now. There was a new sharpness in his gaze, the spark of something wild waking in him. Wherever Luma moved, Kavi followed. If she stopped, he stopped. If she blinked, he blinked. He was her shadow, her heartbeat, her second soul. The woman's throat tightened every time she saw them together. They had become something more than mother and cub. They were two halves of a miracle. The camp gathered around. Vets, rescuers, rangers, all quiet, all solemn. They had built a long fenced pathway, stretching from the tent to the edge of the forest, lined with soft earth and scattered leaves, to guide her back to the wild. The woman stepped close to Luma. She held out a hand. Luma lowered her great head. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world stilled. The woman touched her forehead gently. "Go home," she whispered. Luma moved. She stepped off the table and onto the ground with a soft thump. The camp held its breath. She limped at first, muscles stiff, tail twitching, then walked. One paw, then another, steady, powerful. Kavi trotted at her side, chin high. The camp erupted in quiet cheers. People cried openly. Even the hard-eyed ranger who had led the rescue wiped his face with his sleeve. The woman followed at a distance, her hands trembling. Tears blurred her vision, but she could not look away. They reached the fence gate. Beyond it, the jungle spread in endless waves, green and gold and shadow. The air was rich with orchids, rotting leaves and rain. It hummed with hidden life. Luma paused. She turned her head back once, eyes meeting the woman's, and in that gaze was something vast. Gratitude, recognition, goodbye. Then she slipped through the gate. The forest swallowed her in a shimmer of golden fur. Kavi followed, glancing back only once, a flash of green eyes in the dark, before vanishing into the ancient green. The jungle closed behind them like a heartbeat, and they were gone. The camp stood silent. The woman stayed at the gate long after the others drifted away, listening to the forest whisper somewhere deep inside. Two wild hearts were beating, free again, and she smiled through her tears. Weeks passed. The Amazon shifted back to its eternal rhythm. Rain, sun, thunder, silence. The rescue camp packed up and melted away like mist. The river rose and fell. Time forgot, but the story did not. The woman stayed in the region, working on surveys in the rainforest. Every morning she walked to the riverbank at dawn, hoping to see golden fur flash through the trees. At first there was nothing, but then small signs. A jaguar's paw print pressed into soft mud. A fresh kill left neatly hidden beneath palm fronds. Deep claw marks etched high on a ceiba tree trunk. And once in the distance, a single roar echoing through the canopy. Not full-grown yet. Not cub soft either. Young, wild Kavi word spread through the region. Local tribes whispered the tale of the brave little leopard, the cub who faced the anaconda and led the humans to save his mother. They said he was touched by the spirit of the forest, a chosen one. Hunters said they would never harm him. Guides said the forest itself protected him. And elders said that wherever Kavi walked, the jungle grew greener behind his paws. Then one golden evening the woman saw them. She had gone deep into the forest, far from the trails, following the river. The sun poured molten through the canopy, dappling the water with fire. Something stirred across the river. A massive shape moved through the reeds. Golden black, silent as wind, Luma. She stepped into the open like a ghost from a dream. Her fur glowed like sunlight on honey. Her eyes were molten amber. Her body was strong and sleek and whole. Beside her another shape stalked, longer now, taller, shoulders broad and proud. Kavi. They stood on the far bank, staring at her. She didn't move. They didn't move. The world held its breath. Then Kavi did something astonishing. He stepped forward. He raised his head and roared. It was not the high-pitched squeak of a cub anymore. It was thunder, rolling and fierce, shaking leaves from the branches. The forest echoed it back. Luma's tail flicked. She looked at her son with quiet pride. Then she turned and they melted into the trees, golden shadows fading into green. Gone. The woman stood frozen long after they vanished. Then she laughed through her tears. They were alive. They were home. They were legend. As the last rays of sun bled through the forest, she whispered into the wind, "Run free, brave little one." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more heart-melting wildlife tales, and share it with someone who loves animals. Your support helps more wild souls like Luma and Kavi find their way home. If you were the woman standing at the riverbank, and you saw Kavi and Luma walk away into the jungle forever, would you call out to them one last time, or let them disappear in silence? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every single one.